How did you deal with loss?
Faith. You know, I'm Irish, I'm Catholic. The church has been a big part of my life.
Pierce Brosnan just shared news that stunned everyone. At 71, the iconic former James Bond is bracing for something far more personal than any role he's played. His first wife tragically died of ovarian cancer at just 43. Years later, that same cruel disease claimed his daughter at age 41. And now, a fresh heartbreak is forcing Pierce to confront the one thing he's feared most. The man who once played the world's coolest spy is facing a real-life fight he may not be able to win. And what he's planning next has left fans genuinely concerned. Pierce Brosnan was born on May 16, 1953, in Drogheda, Ireland. From day one, life didn't hand him any advantages. No silver spoon, no family fortune, just a boy with little to cling to. Even his father vanished early, so early Pierce couldn't recall his voice, his face, or the feeling of his presence. To Pierce, he was a ghost. His mother, May, carried the weight of their shattered family. A nurse by trade, she tried to hold life together. But in 1957, she made a heart-wrenching decision. She left for London to find steady work, leaving 4-year-old Pierce behind in Ireland. It was a choice made out of desperation, not desire. That temporary goodbye turned into 7 silent years. During those years, Pierce was shuffled between relatives like a forgotten suitcase. First to his grandparents in Navan, then to an uncle and aunt in Trim. Each move brought fresh faces and cold routines. New beds, strange rules, unfamiliar classmates. He never stayed long enough to call anywhere home. So he learned to stay quiet, to adapt, to survive. Always the outsider, always the new kid. Teachers noticed his intelligence, but also his detachment. He seemed to drift away mid-class, staring out windows, lost in thought. Then came 1964, and a turning point. At 11, he moved to Greenock, Scotland. His mother had remarried. Her new husband, William Carmichael, was a steady factory worker with a gentle heart. For Pierce, it was confusing. He was glad to be with his mother again, but also conflicted. She now had someone else, a stranger, not his father. But William showed quiet kindness. He didn't try to fill a role he hadn't earned. He taught Pierce the small things. How to fish, how to fix things, how to trust, bit by bit. Then one evening, William took Pierce to the movies. It was 1964, and the film was Goldfinger. On screen, Sean Connery dazzled as James Bond. That night lit a fire inside young Pierce. Bond wasn't just a secret agent. He was everything Pierce longed to be, strong, suave, in control. That character became a blueprint for the life Pierce dreamed of. By 16, he made a daring leap. He dropped out of school and enrolled in St. Martin's School of Art in London. With no money, no clear future, just a passion for painting. He admired the works of Francis Bacon and Lucian Freud. At the time, acting wasn't even a thought. His heart belonged to illustration and design. He survived on little more than tea and toast, surrounded by classmates who came from money. Still, he was driven to prove he belonged. But fate had other plans. In 1971, while still studying art, he wandered into a theatre workshop in South London. There, he saw a man practicing as a fire eater. Most would have kept walking, but not Pierce. Curious, he asked to give it a shot. That bold step changed everything. The group saw something rare: presence, courage, charisma. They invited him to join. Though he'd never acted before, something clicked. He stepped into a world of drama and risk, much like Bond's. Not long after, Pierce enrolled in Drama Centre London. For 3 years, from 1973 to 1976, he trained relentlessly. It was no easy path. More than 60% of students dropped out. The program was brutal. Instructors tore down students to rebuild them. Some broke, others quit, but not Pierce. He hustled through side jobs. He studied everything from Shakespeare to mime to circus skills. It cost £1,200 a year, a massive sum for him, but he pushed on. And in 1976, his persistence paid off. He landed a role in the thriller Wait Until Dark. He played a sinister character that made people uncomfortable. The director noticed his chilling intensity. That cold edge worked. A year later, he starred in Tennessee Williams' The Red Devil Battery Sign. Though the play had bombed in the US, Pierce's performance revived it in London. Critics took notice. A spark had turned into a flame. Then came his move to film. In 1980, he made his screen debut, Barely, in The Mirror Cracked with Elizabeth Taylor. He was on screen for less than 30 seconds. He earned just £50 for that brief appearance. but it was his foot in the door. That same year, he appeared in The Long Good Friday with Helen Mirren and Bob Hoskins. His role, a minor IRA character with only a few lines. The film didn't make waves at first, but over time, it grew into a cult classic. And there was Pierce, quietly laying the bricks of a career that would soon explode. By 1982, Pierce Brosnan was barely a blip outside the UK. He'd done some theatre, a few TV spots, but no real breakout. Then, a twist of fate changed everything. He auditioned for a role on a new NBC series called Remington Steel. Not as the lead, just a one-scene murder victim. That could have been the end of it. One scene, one paycheck, done. But NBC's casting director saw more than a guest star. They saw charisma, something they couldn't ignore. So they brought him back, not for the bit part, but to lead the entire show. It was a gamble that rewrote Brosnan's future. The original script called for a grizzled American conman in his 50s. Brosnan was just 29, Irish, unknown in America, and a total wildcard. Still, producers rolled the dice. Over 200 actors had auditioned, many of them American household names. But Brosnan got the nod. His Irish accent nearly cost him the job. Network execs were skeptical. Would American viewers embrace a foreign lead? But the moment he stepped on set, it was clear, he was Remington Steel. Suave, clever, mysterious, and audiences were hooked. The show premiered on October 1, 1982, and it was an instant success. It became NBC's second highest rated news show that season. By the end of year one, over 15 million people were tuning in weekly. But the road wasn't smooth. After 4 seasons, the network pulled the plug in 1986. Fans revolted. NBC backtracked. The show got one more season. Its finale aired in February 1987, and nearly 26 million people watched. It was a send-off most shows can only dream of. At its peak, Remington Steel was generating $50 million a year in ad revenue. Globally, syndication brought in another $200 million. The show aired in more than 80 countries. And something unexpected happened across America. Between 1983 and 1987, applications for private detective licenses spiked by 340%. Brosnan's slick, smart portrayal had hit a cultural nerve. But fame came with strings attached. Just 2 months into the show, critics and fans were already whispering, he should be the next James Bond. In January 1983, Entertainment Weekly called him the most Bond-worthy actor since Connery. Behind the scenes, the Bond team was listening. Producer Albert "Cubby" Broccoli had his eye on him. By 1984, the buzz turned into serious talks. NBC leaned into it. Their promos began teasing Brosnan's spy-like image. TV Guide put him on the cover, the next 007. Even Ian Fleming's widow, Anne Fleming, gave her blessing. Brosnan was exactly who her late husband had envisioned. Meanwhile, the critics were taking him seriously. That same year, Brosnan earned a Golden Globe nomination for his role in Nancy Astor. It was only his second major TV part. And yet, he was suddenly up against titans, Anthony Hopkins, John Gielgud. He didn't win, but came shockingly close, losing by just 3 votes. Even the Astor family, initially against the show, came around to praise him. But the path to Bond wasn't going to be easy. Most assume Brosnan was first offered the role in 1985. Not quite. He was actually under consideration as early as 1983, for A View to a Kill. Roger Moore was hesitant about returning, and Brosnan was already on the radar. Broccoli had met him on the set of For Your Eyes Only, where Brosnan's wife, Cassandra Harris, had a small part. Broccoli reportedly said, "If he can act, he's my guy." But then, the studio panicked. They offered Moore a record $3.5 million to stay. So once again, Brosnan was benched. And in 1986, things got worse. Remington Steel had officially been cancelled. But when rumors swirled that Brosnan was about to become Bond, the show's ratings spiked. NBC saw an opportunity. They reversed the cancellation and rushed out a short 5th season. Brosnan was still under contract. That contract stopped him from accepting Bond. Just like that, his big break was blocked. The very role that boosted his fame became the chain that held him back. He was stuck, watching the role slip away. Bond producers couldn't wait. They cast Timothy Dalton. That moment marked a turning point for both Brosnan and Bond. Dalton was his friend, and Brosnan publicly supported him. But inside, it stung. Dalton's Bond was darker, moodier. Critics were split. And in America, License to Kill flopped, earning just $34 million. Brosnan watched it all unfold from the sidelines. He knew he could have brought something else: charm, confidence, classic Bond energy. But he stayed patient. Between 1986 and 1994, what fans call the lost years, he quietly built his resume. He made smart, strategic moves. In The Fourth Protocol, 1987, he played a Cold War spy in a gritty thriller. It wasn't Bond, but it was close. In 1986, Pierce Brosnan took on Nomads, showing a darker, supernatural side of his talent. He even appeared in suave Diet Coke commercials, tuxedoed, confident, unmistakably Bond-like. Pierce met Cassandra Harris in the late 1970s. She was already a working actress, born Sandra Colleen Whites in Sydney, 1948. The connection was immediate. Pierce hadn't been looking for love, but something about her stopped him cold. She was elegant, magnetic, and suddenly, everything changed. Before long, they were living together in Wimbledon. On December 27, 1980, they said, "I do." For Cassandra, recovering from a painful divorce, it was a fresh start. She brought 2 children from her previous marriage, Charlotte and Christopher. Pierce didn't blink. He stepped in as if he'd always been their father. When Cassandra's ex-husband, Dermot Harris, died in 1986 of a heart attack, Pierce legally adopted both kids. They took his name, but it was much deeper than a legal move. Pierce, who'd grown up fatherless, poured his soul into being the dad he had never known. "I wasn't a father," he once said. "I was just Pierce. And then, I became daddy." In 1983, Pierce and Cassandra welcomed a son of their own. They named him Sean. Now they were 5. The house was full of laughter, and Pierce's career was finally taking off. But no matter what success came, family always came first. He gave them what he never had: unshakable love, security, and presence. Then, something poetic happened. In 1981, Cassandra landed a role in For Your Eyes Only, a Bond girl, years before Pierce would wear the tuxedo. During filming, she introduced him to Bond producer Albert Broccoli. Cassandra believed in him deeply. She pushed him to go after the role. Broccoli was intrigued. He saw something in Pierce. But Remington Steel still had him under contract. Bond would have to wait. Cassandra never stopped dreaming it for him. But heartbreak was coming. In 1987, while Pierce was filming The Deceivers in India, Cassandra fell seriously ill. They rushed back to London. The diagnosis was devastating: ovarian cancer. It wasn't early. It wasn't simple. It had already spread. From day one, Pierce recalled, "We had a fight on our hands." The next 4 years were relentless. 8 surgeries, 18 months of chemotherapy. She lost her hair. Her strength faded, but her spirit didn't. She questioned every treatment, made every choice herself. She fought with elegance and defiance. Pierce never left her side. "I was the quiet party," he said, "always there, often powerless. Little Sean, just a child, would sometimes pretend to treat her. It was innocent and gut-wrenching. Even more terrifying, Cassandra's mother had died of the same cancer. This was genetic. That meant Charlotte could be at risk, too." Pierce began advocating for awareness and early testing. It was too late to save Cassandra, but he hoped it wasn't too late for others. By December 1991, her time was running out. One night, as they lay together, Pierce holding her through his grief, Cassandra whispered, "Please, darling, don't worry. It's just a life winding down." Even in her final hours, she was the strong one. She refused hospitals or machines. She chose peace, chose dignity. On December 28, 1991, Cassandra passed away. She was just 43. Pierce and Christopher were beside her. Charlotte, away in London for drama school, said goodbye over the phone. It was just days after Christmas. As the world celebrated, Pierce was preparing for a funeral. And then came the most painful task: telling 8-year-old Sean that his mother was gone. Suddenly, Pierce was a single father of 3. Sean was only 8, Christopher, 19, Charlotte, 20. He later said it was the first time he truly understood grief. It crushed him, but he didn't fall. "She made me the man I am," Pierce said. "She's in every fiber of my being." Finally, in 1994, Pierce Brosnan became James Bond. The role came with heartbreak wrapped inside it, because of Cassandra. She had once been a Bond girl herself in For Your Eyes Only, back in 1981. By the time she urged him to go for the role, she was already battling cancer. She wanted to see him become 007 before it was too late. She never got the chance. So when he was finally chosen, it wasn't just a career victory. It was a deeply personal triumph, and a silent tribute. GoldenEye wasn't just a comeback for Bond. It was a high-stakes, emotional crossroads. The film had already cycled through directors. The budget had ballooned to $60 million. MGM was on the verge of collapse. If it went under, Bond would have gone with it. But GoldenEye saved the franchise, raking in $353 million worldwide. That iconic tank chase through St. Petersburg. It alone cost $8 million. Brosnan did 90% of his own stunts, including a terrifying bungee jump from a 220-meter dam in Switzerland. It was so risky, no insurance company would touch it. The film dropped exactly 30 years after Sean Connery's last official Bond outing, Diamonds Are Forever. It wasn't just a movie, it was a resurrection. And it worked. Even Nintendo cashed in. They created GoldenEye 007, a game that revolutionized first-person shooters and introduced Bond to a new generation. But the momentum was just beginning. Brosnan's next 3 Bond films brought in a staggering $1.238 billion combined. But every triumph carried a shadow. When Tomorrow Never Dies hit theaters in 1997, Pierce was still grieving Cassandra, 6 years gone. That pain didn't vanish, it fueled his performance. In one chase scene set in Saigon, they spent $12 million constructing an entire Vietnamese street in England. Nothing was spared. The World Is Not Enough came next in 1999. It opened with Bond's longest ever pre-title sequence, 14 adrenaline-packed minutes. It also gave the franchise its first female-led villain. The film went big, literally. They triggered a real oil pipeline explosion using 120 gallons of gasoline. The fireball was visible 10 miles away. Then came Die Another Day in 2002. It marked Bond's 40th anniversary, and nearly ended Brosnan's life. A parasurfing stunt went horribly wrong. Brosnan was pulled under by 30-foot waves and ended up in the hospital with hypothermia. That same film featured a $300,000 invisible Aston Martin and a custom-built ice palace made from 1,000 tons of ice. But Pierce wasn't just a box office draw. In 1996, he won the Saturn Award for Best Actor, beating Sean Connery, who was nominated for The Rock. It was the first time a current Bond had outshone a former one. Even Steven Spielberg called him after GoldenEye to offer him Indiana Jones. Pierce turned it down. He chose to stay loyal to Bond, a decision that likely cost him $50 million. But it spoke volumes about his integrity. Everything seemed perfect, until 2004. He was in the Bahamas, filming After the Sunset. 4 Bond films under his belt, $1.4 billion at the box office. He was in his prime, fit, focused, pitching ideas for Bond 21. Then his phone rang, 2:47 p.m. a short, cold call. "You were a great James Bond. Thank you much. Goodbye." That was it. No warning, no explanation. Worse still, Die Another Day had grossed $431.9 million, more than any Bond film before it. But the studio had made up its mind. They wanted someone younger, and they waited for the moment he was most alone to pull the trigger. Within 72 hours, his world changed. 3 movie deals vanished. Studios backed off. Internal emails later revealed the harsh truth. He was too Bond to cast in anything else. His asking price dropped from $12 million to $3 million. He had to lay off 12 staff members. Depression hit him hard. His children watched him cry when the Casino Royale trailer aired. That cut the deepest. His legacy had been handed off without even a handshake. And behind his back, the producers had been screen testing other actors for 2 years. The betrayal, that hurt more than the firing. But through the chaos, there was something else. Something that started long before he wore the tuxedo. Back in 1994, just months before GoldenEye, Pierce attended a beach party in Cabo San Lucas. It was April 8, 7:30 p.m. there. He met Keely Shea Smith, a journalist. Sparks flew instantly. She wasn't impressed by fame. She saw the man, not the myth. They talked until 2 a.m. Within 3 weeks, she'd met his children. She moved in 6 months later. It was real, and years later, when everything else fell apart, that relationship became his anchor. In 2001, they married in Ireland. The ceremony cost $2.3 million and took place at Ballintubber Abbey, a church that had stood for nearly 800 years. Only 100 guests were invited, including Judi Dench and Liam Neeson. Pierce wore a traditional Irish kilt. He cried as Keely walked down the aisle. But life hadn't finished testing him. Charlotte Brosnan was only 41 when she died in 2013. But this wasn't just a tragedy, it was a generational curse. Her grandmother, Cassandra's mother, had died of ovarian cancer. So had Cassandra herself, at 43. Now Charlotte. She died 2 years younger than her mother. The same disease. The same ending. Charlotte fought with everything she had. 3 years of treatments. Of hope. Of heartbreak. Ovarian cancer is called the silent killer for a reason. By the time it's found, it's often too late. 75% of diagnoses come in the late stages, when survival rates drop from 90% to just 20 to 30%. Charlotte was born in 1971. She lost her biological father, Dermot Harris, and was adopted by Pierce in 1986. He gave her his name, his home, his heart. Pierce Brosnan's life has been marked by love, loss, and resilience. He lost 2 beloved women, his wife Cassandra in 1991 and his daughter Charlotte in 2013, to the same hereditary ovarian cancer. Watching both suffer through brutal treatments and ultimately pass away left Pierce deeply changed. At a 2014 fundraiser, he spoke openly about holding their hands through the disease and the trauma of reliving that pain twice. Despite finding new love with Keely Shea Smith, who stood by him through it all, grief kept returning. Charlotte married just 2 weeks before she died, leaving behind 2 children. Pierce, now a grandfather, stepped in to support the family while also coping with the loss of his siblings' struggles, particularly Christopher's battles with addiction and homelessness. Keely overcame public scrutiny and transformed her health through patience and self-love, their bond growing stronger over 23 years of marriage. Pierce continues to work steadily in Hollywood, recently playing Dr. Fate in Black Adam at age 71, while using his platform to advocate for cancer awareness and environmental causes. Though cancer took much from him, Pierce turned his pain into purpose, fighting to save others even when he couldn't save his loved ones.